The market, a vast ocean of opportunity, often becomes a tempest of self-destruction for the undisciplined soul. My early days were a blur of impulsive entries, emotional exits, the intoxicating highs followed by crushing lows. I was caught in a cycle, chasing the fleeting rush of being in the game, mistaking activity for progress and hope for a strategy. It was a gambler's impulse, a deep-seated need to always be engaged, to always be betting. This wasn't speculation. It was a desperate quest for validation, a brutal addiction to the market's fickle embrace. The turning point was not a single, dramatic revelation, but a brutal accumulation of self-inflicted wounds. I saw the pattern, my own impatience, my own fear, my own greed, dictating my actions. I was consistently losing more than I gained, not because the market was against me, but because I was against myself. I realized then, with a clarity that stung like a whip, that the battle was not with the tape, but with the man holding the pencil. The market was merely reflecting my inner chaos, amplifying my psychological flaws. To break the cycle, I had to master myself first. My first step was to divorce myself from the notion of predicting the market. Prediction is a fool's errand, a gamble. Instead, I learned to observe. I stopped trying to anticipate the market's next move and started waiting for the market to reveal its hand. The tape tells the story, not my hopes or my fears. Waiting for confirmation, for the path of least resistance to solidify, became my creed. This required immense patience, a virtue I had to cultivate ruthlessly. The greatest money is made by sitting still, observing, and acting only when the signs are undeniable. To force a trade is to invite disaster, to feed the addiction. Next, I established an ironclad set of rules. These were not suggestions, they were commandments. Cut losses quickly. Let profits run. Never average down a losing position. Never overtrade. These principles were born from bitter experience, etched into my mind by the sting of financial ruin. My ledger became my confessor, revealing every transgression, forcing me to confront my weaknesses without mercy. Discipline became my shield against the market's temptations and my own impulsive nature. I learned to sever the emotional cord between myself and my capital. Money became merely a tool, a means to an end, not an extension of my ego. My pride had no place in the market. Only cold, objective analysis. I also came to understand the unchanging nature of human psychology. The crowd, always wrong. Their fear, their greed, their baseless hopes. I learned to recognize these patterns, not to join them. I stood apart, a lone wolf, observing the herd's predictable stampede towards either euphoria or panic. This detachment allowed me to exploit their emotional excesses, buying when they were gripped by fear and selling into their unwarranted optimism. Consistency, I discovered, was not born of luck or superior intellect, but of this unwavering adherence to principle. It was the result of mastering myself, not the market. My profits grew not from being right every time, but from being disciplined every time. Large profits on fewer, well-chosen trades, small, swift losses on inevitable missteps. This was the formula for consistency, for breaking the addiction. And thus, I broke the cycle. I transformed from a gambler swayed by every flicker of emotion into a speculator guided by logic, observation, and relentless discipline. The market ceased to be an arena of addiction and became a proving ground for self-mastery. The true cost of chasing the market, of letting emotion dictate your hand, is not merely financial ruin, but the erosion of your very self. The true reward of discipline is not just wealth, but freedom. Freedom from the tyranny of your own impulses. Freedom to see the market for what it truly is. A reflection of truth, waiting to be understood by those with the courage to look within. Therefore, if my journey resonates with your own struggles, if the pursuit of true market mastery calls to you, then I urge you, study these principles, apply them. And if you found value in my words today, then share this message. Like this video, leave your thoughts below, and subscribe to Livermore Mind for more truths from the tape. The market waits for no one, but it rewards those who truly learn. These were not mere guidelines. They were the scaffolding of my new identity as a speculator. Each command was forged in the crucible of past mistakes, a direct counter to the destructive impulses that had plagued me. Cutting losses swiftly was a brutal act of self-preservation. It meant admitting error, swallowing pride, and accepting a small defeat to avoid a catastrophic one. The addiction whispers, "Hold on, it will come back." Discipline screams, "Get out." Protect your capital. This battle fought in the mind, determined survival. I learned to sever the losing limb before the gangrene spread, not out of fear, but out of calculated logic. Letting profits run required a different kind of fortitude. The urge to snatch a small gain, to lock in a quick victory, is powerful. It feeds the ego, offers a fleeting sense of security. But great fortunes are not built on small victories. They are forged in patience, in the unwavering conviction to hold a position as long as the market confirms its strength. The market pays for waiting. It rewards the speculator who has the courage to sit through intermediate fluctuations, to ignore the noise, and to ride the major movement. This was a direct assault on my old pattern of chasing quick thrills, of mistaking activity for true progress. It demanded a deep trust in my analysis, a detachment from the daily gyrations. Never averaging down a losing position was perhaps the most painful lesson. The ego despises admitting it is wrong. It seeks to justify, to double down, to prove its initial judgment correct. This is the gambler's fallacy, the siren song of hope over evidence. To add to a losing position is to throw good money after bad, to compound error with arrogance. I had to learn to respect the tape, to accept its verdict without argument. My capital was not a tool for ego validation. It was a resource for intelligent speculation. This rule taught me humility, a quality more valuable than any market indicator. Never overtrade. This was the direct antidote to the addiction of being in the game. My early days were a blur of constant action, a desperate need to always have a position, to always be betting. This constant engagement, fueled by the market's allure, was exhausting and unprofitable. It diluted my focus, blurred my judgment, and ensured I was always reacting, never truly observing. I realized that the market is not always ripe for speculation. There are times to act, and there are times to sit still, to conserve capital, to wait for the undeniable opportunity. The greatest money is made in patience, not in incessant activity. I had to learn to embrace boredom, to value inaction as much as action. The market is not a casino open 24/7 for my entertainment. It is a field to be harvested only when the crops are ready. This shift from incessant activity to disciplined waiting, from emotional reactions to calculated actions, was not easy. It was a daily fight against the very impulses that had defined my early trading. My greatest fears were not of market crashes, but of my own undisciplined mind. My largest losses were not due to external forces, but to internal weaknesses. I too desired the victory, the sudden wealth. I too dreamed of escaping the daily grind through a single, brilliant trade. But the market does not care for dreams. It demands respect, discipline, and an unwavering commitment to its truths. The truth was stark. The market would expose every psychological flaw. My impatience, my greed, my fear. These were not abstract concepts. They were tangible forces that manifested as losing trades, as missed opportunities. The market was merely a mirror, reflecting the chaos within. To break the cycle, I had to confront the man in the mirror. I had to systematically dismantle the ingrained habits of addiction, replacing them with the deliberate, often painful, habits of discipline. This was a process of internal re-engineering. Each rule, each principle, became a weapon against my own flawed nature. The market does not forgive. It does not offer second chances to the emotionally compromised. It simply takes my early losses were brutal teachers, etching these lessons into my very soul. The pain of those early failures, the sting of watching capital evaporate due to my own impulsiveness, was the fuel for my transformation. I learned that consistency was not about prediction, but about execution. It was about adhering to my plan, even when my emotions screamed otherwise. It was about respecting the rules I had painstakingly developed, understanding that they were not restrictive, but liberating. They freed me from the tyranny of my own volatile mind. This journey was one of self-mastery. The market became my arena for psychological combat, where my opponent was not the other speculator, but my own undisciplined self. Every trade became a test of my resolve, a battle against the old impulses. To win in the market, I first had to win against myself. The addiction to the thrill, the chase, the constant engagement, slowly receded, replaced by a deep, quiet confidence, born of method and discipline. The market's embrace was no longer fickle. It was understood. I began to see patterns, to read the tape with a cold, clear eye, unclouded by hope or fear. The consistency I built was not a streak of wins, but a steady application of sound principles. It was the ability to remain calm amidst the storm, to act only when the odds were in my favor, and to accept losses as a cost of doing business, never as a personal affront. It was the realization that true power in the market comes from power over oneself. It was the realization that true power in the market comes from power over oneself. This power was not a sudden surge, but a deliberate, grinding effort to rewire my very being. The market, I understood, was not a puzzle to be solved by cleverness or intuition, but a current to be observed and respected. My early addiction to predicting, to forecasting the next move, was a form of intellectual arrogance, a desperate attempt to control the uncontrollable. I had to shed this illusion, brutally. The market tells you where it is going. Your job is not to guess, but to listen. This shift from prediction to observation was profound. I stopped chasing rumors, ignored the daily chatter, and focused solely on the tape. The tape, in its relentless objective flow, presented the facts. It showed strength or weakness, accumulation or distribution. My hopes, my fears, my desperate need for a win. None of these moved the prices, only the collective action of thousands of participants did. I learned to wait, with a patience that felt agonizing at first, for the market to clearly reveal its path of least resistance. This waiting was not passive. It was an active, disciplined form of engagement. Waiting is work. It is the hardest work a speculator undertakes, for it pits you against your own impatience, your own desire for constant engagement. My greatest losses often stemmed from forcing a trade, from entering a position born of boredom or the fear of missing out. This was the addiction speaking, demanding activity, demanding to be in the game. I had to sever this impulse. To force a trade is to invite disaster, to gamble, not to speculate. True speculation is a calculated act, executed only when the probabilities are overwhelmingly in your favor, when the setup is undeniable. The market does not owe you a trade. It owes you nothing. It simply exists, a neutral arbiter of capital. My consistency began when I stopped demanding things from the market and started demanding discipline from myself. I too yearned for the excitement, the adrenaline rush of a fast-moving market. I too dreamed of a single trade that would erase all past mistakes, that would elevate me beyond the reach of financial worry. But these were dreams, seductive and dangerous. The market cares nothing for dreams. It rewards cold, hard facts and unwavering discipline. My transformation was not about eliminating emotion, but about preventing emotion from dictating action. Fear would still surface, greed would still whisper, but my rules, my method, became the iron cage that contained these primal urges. The application of my rules became my unwavering compass. Cut losses quickly. This was not a suggestion. It was a surgical imperative. It meant admitting I was wrong, a bitter pill to swallow for any man. But the cost of pride in the market is ruin. Letting profits run. This demanded a different kind of courage. The courage to sit still while paper profits fluctuated, while the urge to secure a small gain screamed for attention. Great fortunes are not made on small, quick profits. They are made by patiently riding the major movements, by giving the market time to unfold its grand design. The market pays for patience, never averaging down a losing position. This rule was a direct assault on my ego, on the gambler's insidious hope that a bad bet will somehow turn good with more capital. To add to a losing position is to double down on error, to ignore the tape's clear verdict. It is a desperate act of self-deception. My capital was a precious resource, not ammunition for a losing battle. Never overtrade. This was the ultimate break from the addiction cycle, the rejection of constant activity. It forced me to value inaction, to understand that the market offers clear opportunities only a fraction of the time. The rest is noise, distraction, temptation. These principles, forged in the fires of failure, became the bedrock of my consistency. They were not abstract theories, but practical defenses against my own flawed psychology. My greatest enemy was always within. The market merely provided the arena for this internal combat. I learned to trust my analysis, to develop a systematic approach that removed the emotional element from execution. The market became less a battlefield of unpredictable forces and more a predictable system, provided I adhered to my own internal system of discipline. The unfulfilled aspirations, the desire for quick wealth that plagues so many, I understood intimately. I had lived through that torment. The market, however, offers no shortcuts. It demands a price, and that price is self-mastery. The consistency I achieved was not a magical ability to predict, but an unwavering commitment to process, to method, to the ruthless application of my hard-won rules. It was the ability to remain emotionally detached, to see the market for what it is, a mechanism of capital allocation indifferent to my desires. This detachment was not coldness, it was clarity. It allowed me to act, not react. This continuous battle against myself, against the ingrained impulses of greed and fear, shaped me. The market became my greatest teacher, brutal and unforgiving, but ultimately, honest. It showed me my weaknesses, amplified them, and forced me to confront them head-on. The addiction to the thrill, the chase, the constant engagement, it faded as the quiet power of discipline took hold. I ceased to be a gambler, and became a speculator, a student of the tape, a master of my own mind. The market's embrace was no longer fickle. It was understood, predictable in its patterns, provided I remained predictable in my discipline. The market's embrace was no longer fickle. It was understood, predictable in its patterns, provided I remained predictable in my discipline. This predictability was not about foreseeing future prices, a fool's game. It was about foreseeing my own reactions, about controlling the man in the mirror. My consistency was forged, not in successful predictions, but in the unwavering adherence to my method, even when the market's whims tempted me to stray. It was the brutal self-honesty to admit when I was wrong, and the stoic patience to wait when there was no clear opportunity. This internal battle was ceaseless. Every day, the old impulses of greed, fear, and impatience would resurface, whispering their deceptive promises. But now, I had my rules. They were my shield, my sword. The market reveals itself to the patient, to the disciplined. It does not yield its treasures to the hurried, the emotional, or the arrogant. My early days were a testament to this truth, a painful education in the consequences of emotional trading. I chased every rumor, reacted to every fluctuation, believing that constant activity was the path to wealth. It was the path to ruin. The true profits, the substantial gains, came from sitting still, from observing the unfolding drama, and from acting only when the conditions were undeniable. This inaction, this disciplined waiting, felt unnatural at first. It was a stark contrast to the intoxicating rush of being in the game. But I learned to value it, to see it as the most profitable form of trading. Waiting is not wasted time. It is active preparation, intelligent conservation of capital and mental energy. My greatest victories were often preceded by long periods of patient observation, by the rigorous filtering of noise, by the quiet cultivation of clarity. The market, in its essence, is a narrative of human psychology playing out in real time. To understand it, one must first understand oneself. The desire for quick riches, the yearning for an easy victory, these are universal traps. I had fallen into them myself, repeatedly. The market does not care for your desires. It cares only for supply and demand. My transformation was about aligning my actions with this cold, hard reality, rather than with my own emotional wants. It was about accepting the market's indifference, not fighting against it. This acceptance was liberating. It freed me from the constant mental anguish of trying to force the market to conform to my hopes. I stopped projecting my desires onto the tape. Instead, I let the tape speak. Its language was clear, devoid of emotion. It told me where the buying was strong, where the selling was persistent, where the path of least resistance lay. My job was not to interpret, but to execute. It was a profound shift in perspective, from trying to impose my will on the market to surrendering to its truth. This surrender was not weakness. It was the ultimate strength, for it anchored my actions in reality, not illusion. I too had yearned for the effortless triumph, the one trade that would change everything. The allure of speculation is potent, promising freedom and power. But the market demands a price for these dreams. It demands discipline, patience, and an unwavering commitment to truth. My early mistakes taught me that the biggest enemy in the market is not the bear or the bull, but the undisciplined self. The market merely exploits existing weaknesses. It preys on impatience, magnifies greed, and punishes fear. To break the addiction cycle, I had to starve these impulses, to deny them the satisfaction of immediate gratification. This was the core of my self-mastery. The consistent application of my rules became a ritual, a sacred practice. Cut losses quickly. Let profits run. Never average down. Never overtrade. These were not mere phrases. They were battle commands, etched into my mind by the pain of past failures. Each rule was a direct counter to a specific psychological flaw that had once cost me dearly. They were the framework that allowed me to approach the market with a cold, clear logic, unclouded by the emotional storms that shipwreck so many. This methodical approach, this unwavering discipline, was the engine of my consistency. It was not about avoiding losses entirely, but about managing them ruthlessly, and about maximizing gains when the market truly offered them. The market, I learned, is not a place for constant action. It is a place for strategic inaction, for surgical strikes. My old self, driven by the addiction to being in the game, would have found this unbearable. The new self, however, understood the profound power of waiting, the silent strength of patience. It was in these periods of quiet observation that true opportunities crystallized, emerging with an undeniable clarity. To rush in, to force a trade out of boredom or impulse, was to invite the very chaos I had worked so hard to overcome. This was the ultimate test, to remain still when every fiber of my being screamed for action, to conserve my capital and my mental fortitude for the moment that truly mattered. This discipline was not a natural gift. It was a hard-won victory earned through countless hours of self-reflection and brutal honesty. I had to dissect every losing trade, not to blame the market, but to uncover the internal flaw that led to it. Was it impatience? Was it greed? Was it the fear of missing out? Each discovery was a painful lesson, but each lesson strengthened my resolve, refined my rules, and brought me closer to the psychological clarity required for consistent success. The market demands psychological fortitude above all else. It demands that you know yourself, your weaknesses, and that you build an impenetrable defense against them. This internal transformation was the true secret to breaking the cycle of addiction and building lasting consistency. It was the realization that the greatest leverage in the market is not financial. It is psychological. This psychological leverage manifested as unshakable control over my actions. I was no longer a puppet to fleeting emotions or the market's seductive whispers. I became the architect of my own decisions, guided by a rigorous framework, not by impulse. The discipline I cultivated was not a burden. It was my liberation. It freed me from the self-inflicted wounds of impatience and fear, allowing me to see opportunities with clarity, to act decisively when conditions aligned, and to remain steadfast when others capitulated. This was the true secret to consistency, an internal fortress against external chaos, built brick by painful brick of self-awareness and unyielding adherence to principle. The internal fortress wasn't a guarantee against losses, but against ruin. It ensured losses were small, controlled, never emotional. Consistency became not a streak of wins, but the unwavering application of method. The market's embrace was no longer a gamble, but a predictable dance of supply and demand, understood through disciplined observation. The addiction to thrill, constant engagement, withered. It was replaced by a profound, quiet confidence. The market became a tool, not a master, and thus the cycle was broken. The old Livermore, driven by impulse and ego, was replaced by a disciplined speculator. My consistency was the fruit of self-conquest, a testament that the greatest barrier to wealth lies not in the market, but within. It was a victory not of prediction, but of patience, not of luck, but of rigorous adherence to principle. The chaotic dance of my early days gave way to a calculated, systematic approach, where every action was deliberate, free from emotion's tyranny. This internal transformation was my greatest triumph, more valuable than any single profitable trade. In the end, the market teaches humility. It strips away illusions. It demands truth. The journey from addiction to discipline is the journey from chaos to control, from hoping to knowing. It is the ultimate test of character, one faced alone, armed with self-awareness and an iron will. The unyielding tape, once a source of terror and temptation, became my most honest teacher, reflecting only the truth of my actions and discipline. My profits were simply a byproduct of this self-mastery. Therefore, understand this. The market does not care for your desires, your fears, your hopes. It cares only for the truth revealed on the tape. Master yourself, and you master the market. Ignore this truth, and the market will master you. This is the enduring lesson, etched in my life's ledger. To truly win, you must first conquer the man within. If these truths resonate, share your battles in the comments below. Subscribe to Livermore Mind for more insights into the unyielding truths of speculation. Your journey to consistency begins with this understanding. The market waits, indifferent, for your disciplined hand.